Okay, so this is part 4 of the Game of Thrones and characters series. Well, it won't be the last one because there's still so many to discover. This one is, sadly each character is a little bit briefer than normal, but that's so I could fit them all in and try and keep as many in so there wasn't just a video with one or two. But anyway, I hope you enjoy it, and thanks folks. So first up in this part 4 is one of the heroes, and yes, I do like some of the good guys in it, and it's Barristan Selmy, and he's like the biggest hero of the book really, isn't he? He's got his illustrious history and illustrious past, one of the greatest knights, one of the knights who's always done the right thing, and obviously he was dismissed by Joffrey, well it was Cersei wasn't it? Because he was just a bit too powerful really, his voice was a bit too strong, so they got rid of him. And obviously Barristan goes to who he believes would be the next greatest ruler, as he served Aegon, Daenerys' father, so he goes to Daenerys. And actually, which is a massive shame in the series, they cut out a lot of what he does in the books. He's an absolutely wonderful character actually, and the last part of the last book written, Dance of Dragons Part 2, it's such a massive role and shows what a hero and what a clever man and a great leader he is, and they cut all of that out. So for Barristan I've picked Maison Francis Kurkdjian Oud Satin Mood, the kind of luxurious rose violet oud fragrance. It's just such a classy, beautiful fragrance, and of course Barristan is he's one of the biggest gentlemen, if you like, in the books, and he does what's right, and he will have obviously that sweet side, but it's not just that sweet side. That fragrance is almost regal. It is something you can imagine a great white knight, a Prince Charming kind of guy wearing. So I think it suits Barristan absolutely perfectly, and hopefully in the next book there's still more of Barristan, because again the show kind of sometimes it ruins a character, doesn't it, with how easily it kills them off and gives them quite a shallow death. So that's Oud Satin Mood for Barristan Selmy. Okay, so the next character I've gone for is a bit of a weird one actually, and she's probably the craziest person in the whole books, is Lysa Arryn. Now Lysa has quite a sad story really. She had been through a lot, and she ended up married to Jon, who was much older. Jon Arryn, that is, who's much older, and kind of, I don't really think it was a love. And then obviously she's got a pretty oddball son. If you've seen the show, you'll kind of get what I mean. But actually she's quite a sad character, to be fair. She had been through a lot, and kind of Catelyn, the beautiful pretty one, got all the glory, the gorgeous husband and the decent husband and all of that. And then obviously after Jon's murdered, she becomes quite even more insane and unhinged and quite isolated, doesn't she really? Up in the Eyrie, and she keeps them out of the war, which is quite understandable. And what I've gone for her is Piano Santal from L'Orchestre de Parfums, and yeah, you'll kind of understand why. It's this beautiful sandalwood fragrance mainly, but it's also incredibly milky. Given she still breastfeeds little nutty Robin, yeah, I thought it kind of suited her quite a lot actually. But again, she is quite a tragic character, and she does meet a tragic demise from, I believe in the books it was Sansa who killed her, and I can't really remember in the series whether it was Sansa or Peter who killed her, but whichever way, she does meet a sad demise after being used, which was quite mad. So that's Piano Santal from L'Orchestre de Parfums for Lysa Arryn. The next character, following on from Lysa, is Peter Baelish, Littlefinger. Now, never sure whether I really like Littlefinger. I suppose you're not really meant to, are you? But he is one of the cleverest, most devious, brilliant men in the book. But it's just because he's kind of the rival to Varys, who is my favourite character, that perhaps I'm a little biased against him. But he is a very decent character, and he fell in love with Catelyn. And again, he's one of them who really didn't have the kind of best of lives, did he? Hence his nickname Littlefinger and that. But yeah, he meets a demise that's quite good actually in the series, but we'll see where it transpires in the books. And what I've picked for him is Burberry London, which actually I think suits him quite well. It's quite a simplistic fragrance, but it is at the same time quite a show-off fragrance. It's very sweet, it's quite green, and it's quite mossy and piney, on top of that rich tobacco and that port flavour, so it's quite flamboyant. You quite imagine Littlefinger enjoying a glass of port and that. Now, again, Peter, or Littlefinger, quite sadly, again, is just after a bit of status for himself, isn't he? He has no family, he has no ties, he's rose up from the bottom, but he very much oversteps himself, and he's very selfish and kind of, he's only in it for himself, isn't he? Which is quite admirable, I suppose. Who else is he going to be in it for? And then when Catelyn's died, although technically she's not, obviously he gets a weird obsession with Sansa, which is quite creepy, and obviously he's trying to recreate that love he had for Catelyn. So I think Burberry London, again, that quite older gentleman showing off kind of thing, actually suits him really well. So that's Peter Baelish, Littlefinger, and that's Burberry London. Now again, another quite an interesting character who doesn't get much love, and that's Viserys, who is of course Dany's brother. Now, he's again a complicated character. I'm not a big Dany fan, which is why she's not really been mentioned. But Viserys kind of got the rough end of the stick, didn't he? He and Dany were obviously swept away to go live in Essos and kind of hidden, and were presumed dead, weren't they? But obviously they weren't killed. And obviously Viserys has been brought up his entire life to believe he's the rightful king and the next king. So he's obviously quite cocky and arrogant, and he wants to do everything to get there. But he's quite a weak man, quite a weak-willed man, probably because he's been so spoilt and that. And he does use Dany quite a bit. And yeah, he's quite despicable, isn't he, really? But again, it's not actually his fault. It's just the way he's kind of been conditioned, and he's quite weak-willed, isn't he, anyway, and he doesn't really know what to do. He just expects to throw money at it and it be done for him. So yeah, I quite like him, and I feel quite sorry for him. What I've picked for him is Love and Tears, which is quite a white floral fragrance, and that's because he's a very pretty, silver-haired, he's got them beautiful violet eyes, hasn't he? And I think a white floral would suit him, and it's quite a classy, elegant fragrance. And of course he'd be quite a classy, elegant guy. And I just think it kind of goes with him. And obviously the name, Love and Tears. He is quite a romantic guy, isn't he? He's just got a bit delusional. Things don't work out quite how you always want them to, do they? So that's what I've picked for him, is Killian's Love and Tears. And again, he meets quite a sad, ironic end, doesn't he? He gets his crown of gold from Drogo poured over his head, and that's how he dies. So he dies a king, doesn't he, I guess? And obviously he dies because he thinks he can still control Dany. He doesn't really want to give up the fact that she's become the popular one. So that's Love and Tears, and that's for Viserys. Right. So the next person on the list is again another quite a tragic one with a tragic story, and that's Loras Tyrell, who is of course Marjorie's brother, and also was Renly's kind of unofficial partner, wasn't he? He was madly in love with Renly, wasn't he? You know, they were quite close and in love, and I suppose it was kind of that when Renly wanted to become king, the king's partner, he kind of encouraged Renly to go for more power, and sadly again he kind of met his downfall, didn't he? He was as the Tyrells were becoming more powerful, he was kind of promised to marry Cersei to bring the families together. That didn't end well, did it? And he ended up in prison and that. Obviously his sexuality and that was just as kind of frowned upon in that period, quite un-PC obviously, but obviously it's set in that period, so it's kind of frowned upon to be who he was. But all he did was kind of love Renly, didn't he? And the fragrance I've chose for him is Amouage's Reflection Man. And I think that kind of represents him perfectly. He was kind of the next Jaime, wasn't he? A very beautiful, elegant man, a great fighter, a very proud man, and that kind of elegant floral class and cleanness of that fragrance kind of matches him perfectly. So that's Reflection Man, Amouage for Loris. Thanks. Now last is probably one of my favourite characters from the whole books, and again I've saved him, and he's not right throughout it, and he does come in quite late, and that's the High Sparrow, who's the leader of the militant faith. And again, he's such a fascinating character with a fascinating history. He did start off as quite kind of a wild man, quite a debauched man, like a typical priest of the time, you know, taking advantage of it. And he kind of woke up one day and totally changed his life. You could compare him to a bit of a kind of, you know, like a Buddha figure who gave up all of his wealth, his position, his power, and wanted to lead and give people kind of a simpler, better life. And obviously he despises the corruption and the power that the current ruling classes have, Joffrey and Cersei, and obviously Tommen's not much better, although he does try to change Tommen. And actually he's a really, really interesting, important character in the book, given all his power and all his ability to kind of control people. And the fragrance I've chosen for him is actually Whispers in the Library, and that's for an obvious reason. It's quite a, you know, a simplistic, vanilla-y, kind of musky, slightly smoky fragrance, but it kind of has that kind of basic religious kind of feeling to it, you know, kind of monks studying in a library kind of thing, and I think it suits him perfectly. And again, he's just such a pivot. I wish he'd lived longer in the book, and I wish he'd managed to bring them down, but obviously he didn't, because that's kind of part of the great story. And anyway, this is you know, this has been a great series that I've really enjoyed doing, and there's so many more rich characters that I might come back to, but we'll see. There might be more parts, but anyway, I hope everyone's enjoyed it. Thanks, bye.